Hey everyone, welcome to another Beginner-to-SSL video. This one is about offensive rotation, or build-up play, or whatever we decide to name it when it comes out. Honestly, this video was initially going to be about shot technique, but as I was breaking down the plays, I realized there was a ton of valuable information in analyzing the build-up to the shot as well. So all of the situations in our clips today are going to be goal-scoring drives, but we're going to be talking mostly about the positioning behind it. Also, this episode is really special because we have our first ever guest. I met up with Supersonic legend Synthex, and he's here to analyze his own gameplay for us, so be sure to stick around for that. One more thing before we get started. This series isn't necessarily meant to be a tutorial or a guide. In my time working with players, I realized the biggest issue people have is translating what they know they're supposed to be doing to real game situations. So I came up with this series to kind of bridge that gap in a practical format where we can jump into real ranked games and talk about what's going on. I'm just here to offer another perspective. And who knows, maybe it'll be useful for you or something you haven't heard before, or maybe it will be. Either way, I hope you enjoy this one. I had a lot of fun making it. Let's go. So we're kicking things off with a Silver 3 game, and I like this situation because there is some tactical depth to it. It's not just like a whiff or something. So you've probably all heard the traditional advice for getting out of Silver. Play this kind of defensive role in your back half and mainly just go for clears and let your teammates do the offensive work. And that's a great approach, but I'm going to break away from that a bit because I think trying to actively participate in offensive plays will help you improve faster mechanically with, limitations, of course. I basically have two simple rules for players at this level. You follow these and you might not win every game, but you'll definitely win enough to get out of Silver after a while. Number one, focus on strong forward touches. Don't worry too much about aiming your touches or passing, just get clean contact however you can. The second rule is don't crowd your teammates. Don't rush and force pressure or force a play on the ball if it means interfering with a teammate or taking up space that a teammate then can't get into. And if you do just these things, I'm not saying you're going to score 10 goals a game, but situations are going to go more favorably for you and it'll be easier to find scoring opportunities. This clip is a perfect example of that. This touch, clean forward contact. Then we go to this touch, clean forward contact. And then finally the shot is just clean contact. And yeah, the blue team makes some positioning errors that allowed this to happen, but you don't want to be the player that misses the simple shots because you're constantly trying to think of some crazy outplay. If at any point these players had gone for a dribble or a pop-up kind of shot, I guarantee you the play probably breaks down and it's a low chance they score from it. And on the surface, people might say this is ball chasey since the players are so tight and moving so quickly, but I want to point out that's not really the case. This kind of tight two-player formation moving down the field is something you see even at the pro level, so it's not chasing the ball here to go after that, and the players aren't on top of each other, they're still playing around each other's touches. And yeah, this example is sloppy, but if you take away the ranks and forget that this touch isn't great, both of these players being here means that they can isolate a 2v1 against this player. And for our purposes, it doesn't matter how you win the 2v1, as long as you get past this player, you get another 2v1 against the goalie, which is a much better chance of scoring. Do I think these players are aware of these tactics going on? No, not at all. But it's important to know how it's not always bad for two players to be close like this. There are times when it's useful. Next up, we have gameplay from a player that sits around Diamond 2 and 3s. I actually know this player personally, and they've told me several times that they don't think they're the best mechanically. So this one is for all you positioning-based players. We're looking at how good build-up play opens the door for tons of offensive opportunities. So starting off here, the blue team has a pretty poor shape. I'm not too concerned with how the team got here because these situations do come up in game, especially in ranked, and you need to know how to approach it when you get here. So the team shape is bad, there's no real support for the play going on right now, and so it's unlikely any real offense is going to come from this. So in this situation, I think being really far back like this is kind of okay, but it's not somewhere you want to be for long because you're not really able to impact the play in any way. Usually I tell players that your goal here is to look for a way to get back into the rotation and sort of help your team stabilize. So if you look on the left-hand side, this player DJ Direk is close to the ball, but they're moving back towards the net, which means we can move forward since our net should be covered. And this is where the patience plays a factor, because if you watch my recent tutorial about field vision, you might notice that this player here has no vision of what's going on in front of them, meaning that they're feeling pressure to get a touch or a clear regardless of whether you're challenging or not, so you don't need to overdo it here. And you see this all the time in high ranks. Players will overexert themselves mechanically when they feel like they're under pressure to get a clear or make a save. So recognize that this player doesn't know when you're coming in, so if you force yourself into a challenge or something here just for the sake of pressure, there's no support from your teammates to actually do anything with it. So really, you would just be making a solo play that starts out as a 50-50, which, yeah, that's not going to go well. So patience here means all the pressure gets put on this player to make a clear, and when you're under pressure, sometimes simple things aren't so simple, they're going to whiff, and this is going to give our player basically the most space that you're ever going to get to take a shot in a threes game. But there's still a decision to make. They should definitely try to score here, but how? Do they take it on a dribble? Do they go for a double tap? Or maybe shoot with the first touch? The backboard here is basically covered by the player on the right side, so that's a no-go. And at high ranks, defenders are going to be ready for a shot. So if this were close to Grand Champ, you'd probably have to take this on a dribble to draw a defender out. At Diamond though, I really like the idea of just working the net and keeping rotation flowing. Anyway, none of this actually matters because while we were talking about this defender overextended. So now you just need to shoot behind them. And the technique here is good overall too. Contact with the corners of the car, you're going to see that a lot. It's not perfect though. The player here actually telegraphs that they're going to shoot top left pretty heavily. So I think high level players would pick up on that pretty easily, and you're going to have to do more to make the outplay at that level. Ultimately, I think this is a really good formula to adopt for players around this skill level. Having this kind of patience where you can still move into a play, but you don't feel the need to rush into it is going to pay off really well. And then not forcing your mechanics here either. A simple shot just keeps the rotation moving and puts your team in a better spot, and that's what matters. Hey everyone, this has been a lot of heavy analysis, so let's take a little break. And while we're catching our breath, I thought I'd give you a quick practice tip for shooting with the corners of your car. If you're watching this and starting to realize this is something you need to work on, here's what I recommend. Start with Vince's Strength and Accuracy pack and work through each shot using the left and right corners of your car. You can practice with or without air roll. For beginners, focus on the small tilt back after you jump and making sure you're consistently diagonal flipping and not front flipping. It'll take some time, but you'll know when you get it right based on the power. And once you're comfortable here, practice building consistency in my air roll ground shots training pack. Good luck. Okay, now where were we? Oh yeah. So next up, we're in Champ 3, and this is a pretty normal transition setup. A lot of the time you actually want your player in the middle of the rotation to make the clear downfield, because having someone upfield gives you more attacking options. So the player we're watching here is just going to sort of passively make their way upfield. This is definitely the right approach since they're last back. There's a little bit of pressure on the ball, and it's obviously not going for the midfield, so there's no real need to rush out yet. I do think they should have started to turn towards the midfield at least a bit once this blue player was going to challenge. It's kind of a nitpicky thing, but since you're not rushing downfield, it doesn't cost you anything to set up for some kind of weird bounce or 50. The clear does come through though, and it's pretty obviously going to give possession to the blue team, and no one's really set up to attack it. So this player makes the right decision to go kind of passive, just to wait and see what kind of touch the blue team is going to get. And they do something that I think is really important that I think doesn't get talked about very much, and it's what I call tucking into the wall on their rotation. Now, without going super in depth, basically I always coach players that when you're anticipating this kind of wall play as the last person back, you want to learn to sort of play out from this small area of the field. In other words, you want to tuck into that space. It's similar to rotating to the back post, where it's an area with a lot of leverage where you can move into, and it creates sort of a cue point to practice out of and help you build consistency. Going back to our clip, I'm going to skip ahead to the shot, which you can see was well taken. The keeper gets kind of pushed up too far in the near post, and once again, we've got contact with the corner of the car. This time we're flipping into it, and there's really no shortcut for getting this kind of placement. It just takes a lot of practice and familiarity with the ball to learn where to hit it to get just the right amount of lift to put these shots in the upper part of the net. So with that said, let's back up. Look, a big thing I coach on in this rank is execution. Players in these lobbies can play fast, they can hit the ball with power. It's not very smooth and it's not very structured, but there are flashes of high-level play at these ranks. And a lot of the time, if you're sitting there just trying to think about whether or not you're always in the right position or fitting into the rotation, you're going to get beat by players with better execution of mechanics. And I know that's not true for everyone, so why am I telling you all this? Well, the player we're watching makes a mistake, and it's one that potentially gets them scored on. When they start coming out from the right wall, they don't respect the Batmobile's potential to get a follow-up touch. And even though it doesn't look likely, they move so far up that even the smallest unexpected tap would have just gone right past them. And they're the last player back. This is way too aggressive based on how close that Batmobile is. And no one is in the space to the left, so there's actually no rush to move into it and take a shot. The shot would have been easier if they had waited a moment. This play could have actually easily been the blue team punishing this over-aggression, but that's exactly why I emphasize really honing in your fundamentals at this level. It's because everyone is pushing themselves to play so quickly that tons of positioning mistakes are happening across the field. And you can exploit that by being the one person in the lobby that is most consistently getting the stronger touches. Finally, for Supersonic Legend, we have SynthexRL. Synthex is someone I worked with a lot. We were catching up over this and I realized we forgot to get his introduction. So he's been SSL in threes for a couple seasons. He is on the varsity Rocket League team at Northeastern University. They competed in CRL League play this previous semester, and the clip we're watching is a pretty standard passing play for this rank. So I'm just gonna let it play through and we'll have Synthex talk us through sort of his thoughts as he's going through this in game.
Rotating out of that left corner, my main focus, having got 100 boost, was to keep my speed up, keep my positioning intact, but also keep that boost level, in the high 80s or preferably 100, which luckily I was able to for the most part. In the spot Bureau was in, I could tell that he wasn't going to get a great pass into the midfield, so I didn't need to be really close. Whereas if it did go behind him into Frazier, I knew that he was going to go for a pass because he could see where I was. I knew that I could get to the shot before the back two defenders because the question mark guy was awkwardly on the backboard at the same time as Justin going for the pass, and Matt was awkwardly in the middle of the net. So as soon as I was going for the shot, I knew that both of them were going to be almost at a standstill. I pretty much had to assume they were going to jump for it based off of me putting it top left or top right. So I flip into it a little early or a little high just to get it under the first defender, and it was a bit of luck on the behalf of the back post player not being able to get to it in the end, but it put him in a really awkward spot where he couldn't really see whether it was getting past Matt or not.
So was this play luck? Well, yes and no. From the player's perspective, there's definitely an element of luck here. I mean, everyone in this lobby is super skilled at the game. They probably make this save 9 times out of 10. But from a coach's perspective, this is exactly why the fast infield pass is such a powerful offensive tool. The motion of the ball here whips defenders' cameras around, so they're not going to be ready for this unexpected placement, and that's why it works so well. All right, that's gonna do it for this video. First, I wanna say, I know that was a lot of slow motion. I'm sorry. I'm gonna play all the clips at game speed for you so you don't get too used to seeing things that slow. I hope you found some solid information in this video. I think knowing when to be aggressive and when to be passive is a difficult balance that you have to sort of find. And hopefully seeing some of these other players approach it is useful for you. I'm gonna wrap up by saying thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking around. We just passed 2,000 subscribers and I just really appreciate all of you. If you think the videos are helpful and you enjoy the content, consider liking, subscribing, turning on notifications. Let me know what you liked or didn't like in the comments so I can continue to make these better. Give me a follow on Twitter. Also, I have a creator code. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one.